Welcome to Pop-O-Holics, episode 22.5. Does this count as an actual episode? This is a split. This is part 2 of our brand new conversation. If you haven't listened to part 1, you might be a little lost. If you've never listened to the band brand new, you're going to be very lost. So I encourage you to do a little bit of both. But on this episode, we go into the last 2 albums released by the band, Daisy and Science Fiction. After that, we get into a very long conversation, important conversation, about Jesse Lacey and the Me Too movement as a whole. Please send us your feedback at popoholicscast@gmail.com. Follow us on all the social media, and go participate in our polls that we have going on there. And please leave us a 5-star review. If you do, we'll read it aloud on the podcast. Hope you enjoy this episode of Pop-O-Holics. All right, so 3 years goes by. Personally, I'm in college, and again, are we going to get another album? They haven't said anything. They stopped touring for a year and a half, 2 years. Some rumors they were in the studio, and then they again. I think it was one of those again. Beyonce drops. It was this sudden, hey, it's out, kind of thing, and we get Daisy in 2009. Holy shit, they took a left turn. They decided that they didn't give a shit about if you wanted that sound to continue with The Devil and God, and they made a real rager glass jaw of an album. How'd you guys think about Daisy when you heard it, and versus like maybe now? Because I know this one takes a little bit of getting used to. Bobby, we start with you?
Yeah, I have this friend who I haven't talked to in years, but his name's Jacob.
Jake, yeah, and this is his favorite album.
Yeah, but it's funny because every time I would have a favorite artist, he was so like non-mainstream about everything, and he always hated on my musical.
He was
taste.
A hipster before there was hipsters.
Yeah,
for sure.
And now he probably hates hipsters because they exist. But he was just so against the grain, against mainstream. And I remember when he always, shit on the music I like. And then when Daisy came out, he goes, dude, this album's awesome. Which instantly made me feel, I'm like, oh no, I'm not going to like this up front. And honestly, it takes a little bit longer to digest it than I think their previous albums. But still, I still love this album. There's not much I can say, because to me, it wasn't that big of a drop-off from when Devil and God were raging inside of me. I liked how Devil and God was so different than Deja, and I expected them to continue that trend of kind of pushing the envelope. And it starts off really heavy with Vices, and I love, this was like, to me, I believe the introduction of the little speaking parts they put in their albums, like you hear like a reverend talking.
Well, they did a little bit of that in The Devil. They did the I Could Never Love You, the Untitled.
A little bit. Yeah. But my favorite track is the title track, Daisy. I still feel that every time I hear it. It's just like, it's just a wave of emotions in that song, and just it's very eerie with the kids speaking in the middle of it.
When he was on a shelf, I saw him in my dream. I'm a mountain that has been moved. I'm a fugitive that has no legs to run. I'm a preacher with no pulpit.
And one of those. I remember hearing I was listening to Daisy in the car for the first time, and in a lightning storm. And
man.
And that's how you're supposed to listen to it, Bobby.
It was just one of the most, like, it was like the perfect time to listen to it. And I feel like Brand New God always puts Brand New in my life for a reason at a specific time. And I just remember the emotions, like feeling, I'm like, I love this album. And the music, every time, like the guitar, the drums hit a certain point, the lightning would go off. It was almost like God put a little default setting on the storm clouds for the music.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Brian, what's your take on Daisy?
So, I'll probably say this is one of my least favorite of their works. There are tracks that I like on it. It's not something that I've come back to much recently. I definitely appreciated them kind of leaning into this heavier, like less. Although the lyrics are still good, it's like not something where they're going out of their way to make it legible is not the right word, but understandable to the listener without having to read the lyrics. I appreciate that, and it's a very raw album, and it doesn't work as well as Devil and God for me, but I think for what they're going for, I appreciate it. And like I mentioned earlier, apparently it wasn't. It was very much made to be a live album, and I saw them after they had put this out. So a lot of this stuff live maybe helped me to understand what they were going for. And coming back to the album, I liked it more after that. But a track, one of my favorite tracks off this was "You Stole."
Yeah, you stole. Yeah, you stole. So far a liar and you're a thief. At least we both know where the other one sleeps. So let's end this tonight.
I really like it. It's just beautiful the way he's singing and the kind of like the ambient vocals that are happening. I really like what they're doing on some of the tracks here. But like I said, it's lyrically, if you're looking for lyrics, this is probably not the album you wanna start with for brand new.
Yeah, I can see why a lot of people don't like it. It's really special to me because like listening to this album, I just see my drive to school because I was listening to this on repeat in my Toyota 99 Toyota Camry. R.I.P. I miss you every day. And I love this album. It's really interesting. I didn't like it as much at first, but I just kept powering through it and was like, I'm gonna learn to like it. And I really do think the harder thing is that it's not. I talked earlier about the layers that they were doing with Devil and kind of the complexity and all this stuff. I really feel like they stripped down and they're like, all right, we're gonna do like 5 guitar tones, and we're gonna hammer this out. Lyrically, I like it because it's very different. I know that other band members actually wrote a lot of the lyrics and focused less on some of the lyrics Jesse was writing. I know Vince wrote a couple of the songs. I know the what is the one? Oh shoot! This is really. I think the last song is completely written by Vince, who's the lead guitarist, and I think that's really cool. That
Handcuffs.
Yeah,
Noro. I think
I know
on the previous.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
No. Yeah. Whatever the.
I think he did write Handcuffs.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And Vince wrote Handcuffs. You're right.
Yeah,
but we're continuing this collaboration between the other members of the band, coming a little bit more for the songwriting. I think it's more about little vignettes. It almost feels like of stories, and it's not as like cohesive to one thing. Daisy, I think the reason it connects with a lot of people really like the title track because it's kind of Jesse's point of view perspective, and we don't get a lot of that on this album. But what we do get. I do like the variance from what they've done, and again, that development of their sound. And I at first I didn't like the simplified nature of it, but it's really grown on me. And live hearing the tracks off this album, they do their best work on this because it's just fun and energetic, and you can tell they really like playing it too.
Right.
It's really fun for them. But this album hits you like a train, and it's very abrupt and very dissonant at times. But a lot of really cool ideas. I love Vices. I love the way it opens. This is their shortest record, too. So if anything, it's just a little too short, and it leaves a little bit to be desired. But I think it's really tight. I think it's a really tight album. Tight. I like it. It feels almost like the evolution. This kind of feels like the Your Favorite Weapon of their later years, where it's just kind of, they're just making music, and of course it's still kind of down and post-hardcore and screamy and stuff. I think people have a hard time with it because they really stripped away a lot of the melodic elements. There's not as much layering vocally, not as much interesting stuff happening, not necessarily on the lyric side, but just on the vocal melody and harmony side. You lose a lot of that, and a lot of it's just straight, like, screaming, like, it sounds like a train screeching a lot of times, the vocals. So I can get why people don't vibe melodically with it, but it's a lot of fun, and definitely... if you got a fast car, throw this on, and you rip up the track to this one. It's really cool. Any final thoughts? Any other I know you said Daisy's your favorite. What's one of your favorite tracks on this, Brian?
Yeah, I had mentioned You Stole. That's up there for me for sure.
That feels like doing a drug. You stole. It honestly is
Yeah,
this
it's
ride.
it's a downer. Yeah,
It feels like you're
Like a
injecting
opiate.
heroin, and then towards the end, you take speed. That's really cool.
Yeah, I tend to like those kind of.
How many times have you done
progressive
heroin?
tracks.
I've never, but I've listened to You Stole.
Yeah, and I imagine it's pretty similar.
I think Vices. I think the way it kicks off. I think it's one of my favorite tracks on the record. Just it tells you right up front what it's gonna be.
Dun, 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 dun.
It like really it's like this is what you got.
Yeah.
It starts with that. It starts with that beautiful, sweet like sample as well, and then just.
Which closes and ends the entire album, which is
Yeah.
really cool. And I imagine, they designed it to be like if you just found this vinyl and put it on, you would immediately be struck with this older vinyl sound, and then it would go into Vices. Like I almost like they're like it's a trap for whoever finds this and it doesn't see the label.
And to lead into the next one, they actually have an audio clip, like one of those, sound bites that is in both this and the next album we'll get into, which is Science Fiction.
Oh, interesting.
The line where he says, and we remember that grand old message. I know you, but I never get tired of it. Number 99, just as I am. But it's
Wow.
it makes a reappearance in the next album as well.
Yeah, number 9.
You guys really
Number
got me
9.
feeling like a nerd. I'm nerding out. With
Oh, it's
brand
so
new.
great.
I'm
So
getting
that's what we do.
chills. Like this
So,
is this is so
Yeah.
fun.
All right, Science Fiction.
So let's go into it. Science Fiction. 8 years goes by, and we think Brand New is dead. They come out with a couple singles a year before this album launches. I know I had given up hope that we would get another Brand New album at this point. This dropped 2017. I am now a working adult. I'm now trying to live my life, and I get some sweetness, some beautiful Brand New. And I think that as probably the last record we'll get from them, it's a great swan song.
Got my Messiah impression. I think I got it nailed down. I wanna tell you we're alright. Wanna erase all your doubt.
This might be my favorite album by Brand New, which I don't know how people generally took this one, but this gets to my internal conflict with this band. So I have Apple Music, so I listened to this right when it came out and was immediately hooked. I love this album from top to bottom, and I actually ordered the vinyl probably 2 months before, whenever they did the pre-sale for the vinyl copies. And by the time I got my vinyl, the whole Allegations had come out. I've never listened to this vinyl. I actually had not listened to Brand New at all since I heard about these Allegations. So I'm very conflicted. I re-listened to this album again today, and I still love it. It's really incredible. I feel like he's at the height of his songwriting abilities, like totally different from Daisy. Thematically very much in the same realm as The Devil and God, I think, but maybe even not more explicit. But I just love the writing on this album, and it's got some beautiful tracks as well. We'll get into favorites in a little bit, but I'm very, like you said, it feels like a great swan song. If they never put anything else out, which I'm fairly certain that they won't, this will go down as one of their best for me, hands down.
So this album came out, much later. I wasn't expecting it, and man, is it a combination of everything they've ever done right. A lot of interesting stuff. I would say it's not their most cohesive album. I'd say Daisy and Devil are tighter. This one feels a little meandering, which I'm okay with, just because you get more. I'm glad it's a little longer and meandering. But yeah, full maturation of Jesse Lacey and his lyrics, and he's a grown ass man. He's an adult, and he got a lot of experience with life and seeing people grow old, and you get that peek behind the curtain of a man with a little bit of wisdom. And ultimately, it's not a downer. I really do feel like they made a point to keep it a little uplifting. You still get a lot. It's still an emo album at its core. But I do think that it's mostly retrospective in a healthy way. I think this is a very healthy album to listen to, and I still am digging into this. This is still something that I've had the least amount of time to sit on and listen to. All these other albums I've been listening to for the last 10 years now, easy. since Daisy. It's almost 10. It's 10 years this
10
year.
years.
So I'm only in the second, not even year and a half, because it came out mid 2017. I'm still digesting this album, and I still think there's more to discover in it. I think it shows that Jesse Lacey's a very different person than I think the history of where his misdeeds are and what we'll talk about. It's a shame this album coincided with kind of this, and that those things were brought up at the timing that it was, and it kind of tanked the reception because it was in talks for like album of the year and Pitchfork. And I think that everything that happened towards the end of the year really diminished the quality of that the album is, for better or for worse, right? But yeah, that's what I think of science fiction.
Yeah, it's weird. It's almost like a confessional when you listen to this album. Like if you didn't, because I'm gonna be honest, I didn't listen to it a ton. Like when it came out, and after re-listening to it after the allegations that came out and stuff, you're like, wow, did he write this like knowing what was going to happen? He talks about the people. He has a specific lyric about about the people he abused, and he gets really into the psyche of what it means to can you recover from who you were? Can you be born again? Can you come back to Earth? Can you just kind of like have this redo? Can we be different? Can we be good people still, even though we did bad things in our life? And I don't know. I think and this is why I struggle with what he did and everything, and like just saying I'm not gonna partake in this or listen to this music, because you can see a very contrite person to me. You can see someone that knows what he did had an effect on people and had a very negative effect, and he almost seems like he would give it all up. All that fame and notoriety, something he never really sought in the first place, but, got to him and he took advantage of in a very misguided way. But the album's great.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the album. The album's just really good just to, like, do absolutely nothing to, just close your eyes and listen to, like, from top to bottom to me.
I think if it's the last one we hear, I think it's a good way to end the band on.
I don't think there's any way they ever make another record. And it was also interesting, as the allegations came out late 2017, when they were on tour, when we saw them at Red Rocks, they had an emblem as their background that said brand new 2000 to 2018. So they almost were hinting that the end was near anyways.
Yeah.
And I think they even made mention of that in comments and stuff, that like you go to, I always think of Bought a Bride from Daisy, and he has this line where he says, "Go and buy a hammer, never sing again." It's almost like he wants to know if his life would have been more fulfilled had he just like just been almost like Jesus was a carpenter. And that's why he refers to Jesus a lot. Just this simple kind of be a good person. I don't need this kind of limelight in my life.
Yeah.
I literally just talked to my friend about this line on a phone call before the podcast. Yeah, that exact line. It's really funny that you bring that up.
Yeah, I think he brings a lot of that up in Waste.
I'm hoping that in time you could lay down all this weight you've been carrying around, and maybe one day you find your way to climb on up out of your grave with the bits of you managed to save, and for the last time they say goodbye.
It's this very much growing up song. This song about just getting old, and I believe the song is about like a friend, or at least a close brother-like figure, and seeing people repeat the same mistakes. And maybe he's speaking in the third person about himself, but really just this constant idea of like, can we get better? And I think you're hitting the nail on the head. Musically, I think again it's kind of a mishmash. Again, it loses a little cohesion from some of their other records, but you kind of get you get Vinny doing some sick licks. You get great percussion elements. You get a lot more melodic stuff.
Soft spot.
variety. I mean, this album's it doesn't feel like a greatest hits. That would be going a little too far, but it does feel kind of like this is less an album. There's some cohesive stuff they did with audio stuff and the science fiction aspect of the psychiatric ward and kind of that analysis, because that's kind of the theme kind of running through it. Mm-hmm. But it feels a little looser. You know, it's not super constricted to that.
Yeah, it's kind of like a summation. It feels like,
and I'm glad this is absolutely. And I'm glad this is what the product that they put out, because I know originally they had basically made a whole album a year or two before this and shelved it. If I don't know if you remember, but I Am a Nightmare, You Are a Miracle, that song came out. That was going to be like one of the tracks on the CD, and basically they weren't happy with what they wrote. It's almost like they tried to go back to what they were. Like,
well, I know they had said when they were writing, there was early word that in between Daisy and that one, they were like, we're going to try to write something upbeat and happy.
And then he also came out and he goes, we're not those people. Like, we can't. He's like, we got to be who we are at this point. Yeah. They didn't want to put out something that was what ended up not happening, basically, where they, this is how he was in his life. Yeah. They struggle with religion, mental illness. Those are the themes that came up. And I way rather you make an album of where you're really at instead of pandering to what you think people want to hear as some sort of like curveball to where you were, going.
Yeah, of course.
I think the record, again, expertly produced. Can't say enough good things about Mike Sapone. The dude's a master, and I think displaying his balance of dynamics again. And it's great to see their collaboration kind of reach an end in such a meaningful way.
This album has a set of lines that may be my favorite lines that Brand New has done. It's on 137, and he is talking to God, and he says, "Before the garden, when you were all alone, you made the atom. Was that some inside joke?
That's
Open the gates and then conceal the path. Let's load the gun and see how long they last."
Before the garden, when you were all alone, you made the atom. Was that some inside joke? Open the gates and then conceal the path. Let's load the gun and see how long they last.
And I feel like this is something that, and maybe it's because I am thinking about the God question a lot more in my older age. As I've gotten older, I've thought about it a lot more consciously, and I feel like there's such a truth to this this questioning of the intention of a potential creator and seeing life as it is. And this song is explicitly about the atomic bomb, and there's the play on atom and atom, which I just love that kind of wordplay.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
But it really resonates with me and kind of shows what I love about this band. It's like this type of introspection is beautiful.
Yeah, lyrically, like I said, still diving into. I don't have a lot to say because I still don't understand a ton of what he's saying, and because the songs aren't as cohesive as they have been in the past. He has one song that I think is like a real outlier about like a hyper conservative. It's kind of like an alt-right perspective.
That's a weird one. Yeah.
It's a weird song, and I think
the one about kissing boys in the streets.
Yeah, and
Desert,
kind of
I think.
Say, go pick up your gun.
I seen those boys kissing boys with their mouth in the street. But I raised my son to be a righteous man. I made it clear to him.
I actually kind of love that song.
I love that song, and you can tell I think he vocally and how they did the vocals, it doesn't sound like him in any other track. So I think he is a character. I know a lot of people, there's controversy about, his thoughts. They're like, what is he saying? But I do think that there was this aspect, and that kind of comes out of nowhere, and there's a lot of weird stuff like that. So
I like that about it, though, because there's not, it somehow all flows together, but each track is unique to itself. I mean, there's different moments throughout. I think it's like taking you on a story. It's almost like a Broadway, like a very dark Broadway.
And
I know a lot of people. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, going into the biblical things. The song's called Desert. It could be this idea of being tested in the world as someone who wants to be a Christian, getting back to Jesus being tested by Satan in the desert, if our listeners are unfamiliar with that story. But the progression is out of manna, which manna is a biblical world,
right.
in the water, and then
water.
desert. Yeah, so definitely something on there. But I agree. I think there's more to this album that I need to dig into as well, Christian.
Yeah, I know a lot of people like Logic. I feel like that stuck out to a lot of my contemporary people that are a big fan of this band.
Logic got us into trouble the first time we discovered we could use the same logic to get us out of trouble and shake off all the
I don't. That's not one of my favorite songs, but I think it relates to the idea of the people that go to brand new shows, and I think it's a very broad message to young people, and so I think that relates to a lot of people, and I know that's a big popular one. And I just wanted to mention it for the fact that even though I'm not the biggest fan of it, I feel like it speaks to a lot of people that followed the band. And talks about kind of people's, he has that line about shake off all the people that we abused, which I think we referenced earlier. And so, wiping off the dust of what we were and getting out of the emo stage and growing up and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's weird because like some of the songs on here, like musically, my favorite ones aren't my favorite lyrically, and then lyrically aren't my favorite musically. So there's stuff I like about every aspect of the song.
See, I think I'm just a sucker for some of their slow stuff. Like, Could Never Be Heaven is just so beautiful to me. I love that song so much.
singing, and all the songs are about you, and all the songs are about you, and all the songs were about you.
It goes back to show that you also liked You Stole.
I know.
I'm
a sucker.
And then it comes, that song is so
for
great.
anything acoustic.
Because it's like,
oh no.
there was
back.
there was a leaked demo that's very Morrissey. This song to me is like a folk Morrissey song. And I really appreciated listening to his influences come out there. And it's a beautiful track. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to dive into, why love is hard and complicated and never meet your heroes and all that shit.
Burn your idols.
When we come back on
Pop-O-Holics.
Welcome back to Pop-O-Holics. We're talking brand new. We're talking, we've gloated about them and spoke their praises and things that we love about them. This is the part that kind of clouds every conversation that you have online about this band or in person whenever you reference it. And this is particularly hard because it's a lot of people's favorite band. And so in late 2017, shortly after Science Fiction came out, amidst all the hashtag #MeToo stuff, gentlemen, I believe on Facebook, it was like a group of people that kind of just brought up and was like, hey, while we're on the topic, Jesse Lacey's a real piece of shit. And they brought up a couple of other allegations that had already come out, but kind of made their way back into the public zeitgeist. And I feel like we're as effective as they were because Brand New came back into the mindset of people, Science Fiction just came out, so they're just officially a band again. They're going on tour. They were currently on tour during this. And so all these came forward, news sites and alternative rock sites, and everybody picked it up. Brian, you want to tell us what some of the allegations were against Mr. Jesse Lacey?
Sure. So the two main ones that I saw and that were widely reported on in the music industry, one was a girl named Nicole Elizabeth who met Lacey when she was 15 years old in 2003, and he requested nude photos from her on Instant Messenger. So that was the first one that I had heard about. And the other one was a girl named Emily Driscoll. She met Lacey when she was 16 in 2002, and he asked her for sexual photos as well, beginning when she was 17. And she also met up with him at a concert. And under the guise of going back to the green room or one of the rooms behind the stage to pick up some of his stuff, he closed the door behind her, pushed her up against a wall, and it wasn't explicit what he did to her, but there was some unconsensual activity that happened there that seemed very much forced. She's quoted as saying, "He pinned me against the wall with his knee between my legs." So, and that was when she was 18. So those were the two main ones that I saw.
And these kind of surfaced and were collaborated with other people and were reported on. And, it became the thing that's happened with a lot of people, and especially in the hashtag Me Too era. And it was, fuck this band, fuck Jesse Lacey. He's disappointed us all. But Bobby, do you remember how you heard about all this?
Yeah, I believe it was on Facebook, and I just saw the article. And it's like, yep. These were some of the demons he was talking about.
Indeed.
Oh man,
yeah, it's tough to swallow. I want to know your guys' opinion as far as because he never really. I mean, he apologized, saying basically for himself in person, as far as he had done things in the past. He never really specifically said what it was.
Yeah, he never owned up to specific allegations. It was more like, hey, I've struggled with this kind of stuff for a long time, and I'm very sorry. I've hurt a lot of people, and I'm focusing on being a good husband now. It was essentially that in a nutshell. And a lot of people didn't think that was good enough because he didn't specifically apologize to certain individuals or own up to specific activity. And this goes into something we'll talk about, which is what is a good apology? Is there a path to forgiveness? Which is something a lot of people have talked about. I know personally when this came up, it was a lot of me immediately contacting a lot of female friends that I have that are fans of Brand New and getting their perspective. It's weird when you go online in the Twitter spheres where a lot of this happens, where there's public outcry of what is just. We need justice for what has transpired, and burn all the albums and remove all the tattoos and all that stuff. And it's a really painful thing to go through as a fan because you can't. Obviously there's no defense of those actions, and you don't want to go on the defense and be like, well, everybody. I mean, there's the go-to excuses of well, everybody's done it and different time, and those are the common things that you'd go to, and you can make those points, but it's really mute. It's a moot point to just kind of compare things because it's really not a whole lot of comparison. There's specific things, specific people were hurt. And it really sucks, and I'll get over some of my overall thoughts. But Brian, what were your initial thoughts when you and how did you hear about these allegations?
So I also probably heard about them on Facebook. My good friend Peter and I are big fans. We've seen them together, and saw something in late 2017. Looked it up online, and this is the point, like I said, I hadn't gotten my vinyl of science fiction. I was loving this album, and shortly after this, I stopped listening to Brand New entirely. It felt like this. It seems like almost a I don't want to say a silly reaction, but it's I don't know. Some people would say, what does that even do? But it in the moment, and still now, it felt like, I don't know if I can be supporting someone like this so openly who hasn't been held accountable for what he's done. And we're just in this age where this is far too common. I know you mentioned the Me Too movement. It started. I would say it largely started with Hannibal Buress bringing attention to Bill Cosby's raping and drugging of a multitude of women, and he was actually finally held responsible for that and is going to jail now. Into the Harvey Weinsteins of the world, who this guy, he was a huge Hollywood producer. He literally hired former intelligence officials from Europe and elsewhere to pretend to be victims, to find out what his victims were telling journalists, to get close with journalists, to blackmail people. This type of activity is far too ubiquitous and still needs to be exposed in a way. So, it just felt really wrong to me. And going back and looking through some of their lyrics, artists are very open about who they are for the most part, it seems. And even if they're not fully aware of how open they are, it seems like it's all pretty much on the page a lot of the time. So it just made me feel kind of gross going back and listening to his music. I feel that with Lacey in particular, this was in 2002 and 2003. This was at the very beginning of their fame. In my mind, there's no way in hell it was just these two girls. I feel like he was traveling all over, and if he's doing it with these two, why wouldn't he be doing it with all these other girls at his shows, And the fact, obviously, we can't expect him to fully incriminate himself. I know one of the victims had said he would over and over request different photos, and he said, I need them because I can't store these on my computer. So he's like very, very aware of what he's doing, that it's wrong, that it's illegal, and that he's covering his tracks for it. And it's just despicable that this type of activity can be so unfortunately common. And I appreciate this discussion is happening. I'd like to hear, what you guys think about if you think he did it with other women or what. But power is habitually abused, not only in this country but around the world. And women are generally, women are one group of people who has consistently been abused and oppressed by how society is right now.
Okay, well, let me play devil's advocate for a second.
The devil and Bob.
That's good. The devil and Bobby are raging inside this podcast right now. I would like to say, first of all, I've been talking about this topic a lot lately because on my podcast, last week, and the podcast will be out soon, I had a female comic on, and we talked about Louis C.K. And we talked about comparing different allegations. You brought up Bill Cosby. And I think one thing we got to keep in mind is there's so many gray areas in each situation. You can't treat them all like they're the same. People like to blanket all these people under the same category. Mm-hmm. And I'm not excusing what he did. I know that sounds like a cop-out, like at the beginning, I'm about to excuse everything he did. But I just want to bring up a few things. One, I don't think anybody understands, unless you're in that situation, what it's like to have that fame and that power. And he is young at the time. I'm not saying. And here's the other thing: I don't think any of us know the entire story. It's like you said, Brian. There's no way these were the only two girls that this happened to. But I think in a lot of girls' cases, a lot of girls that I've talked to, when they're that young, they still know most of them know what they're doing in that situation. And a lot of them will say, well, I wasn't really a victim. Like, that's what I wanted too. These girls, that might not have been their situation, and they might have felt coerced into this in some kind of way. But after listening to these interviews, this happened over a number of years, and it kept going. And you can look back on it and say, these girls are victims, these girls were abused. But I just feel like God only knows sometimes. I feel like you wonder how much of it they played into it. How many women came forward during this movement? I can't put myself in these situations, and I think we got to realize, and people also say we can't take the time period into account, and I think you can. I think that's what progress is. There's still places in this world where 14-year-olds are getting married off to 35-year-olds for goats.
Within the last 5 years in Florida, 13-year-olds have been married legally in Florida. Only last year did we get a 17-year-old.
In Brazil, it's still consent is 14.
And we've created these different societal norms. And like, I'm not saying like why, as in a sense of like, why would we care about age or anything like that? But we also live in a society where it's wrong, it's illegal, and somebody can be considered a sexual predator if they're 19 and hook up with a 16-year-old, but yet an 18-year-old can be with a 50-year-old, and everyone's like, oh well, it's the legal age, like that's
sure.
I think every individual is different, and I think it's hard to say. I just think it's a gray area. I don't think it's 100% black and white, and I do agree with you though. I think there was more than one, two women that this happened to.
Right, and this gets into the question of what consent is and what age you can actually knowledgeably give consent. But there are laws for a reason, right? Like, you can make the argument that 18 is a semi-arbitrary age for consent, but it's not like Jesse Lacey didn't know the laws. He was actively going after women he knew were underage and requesting photos.
But do
from
we
them.
know that?
But he was we do. But he actively, from all the stories and reports I've read, he never engaged in sexual activity with anybody that was underage. But he would like
requesting photos is sexual activity.
What they've called grooming, which is I don't know if it's a new term, but it's this idea of creating a relationship with a younger person and slowly manipulating them into kind of a sexual relationship that it seems under the guise of consent, but really it's just manipulated.
You use your power to manufacture dependence.
But we're fooling ourselves if we act like women, even if.
But these aren't women, Bobby. Come on, 14-year-old. That's not a woman.
It wasn't 14. Wasn't it? It was 15 and 17.
Excuse me, 15.
And I'm going to be honest with you.
Huge difference.
No, I'm going to be honest with you.
What, ninth grade
women,
versus 10th
women
grade?
in their sexuality
Potentially
progress
8th grade,
so
9th
much
grade, yeah.
faster. Women in their sexuality progress so much faster than men do. In their emotional state. Once again, I want it to be perfectly clear. I'm not defending and saying that what he did was right. I think it is an obvious abuse of power.
Yeah.
But I think women, we don't know what this state that this young lady, I will say, was in. Like in her, obviously she's intelligent enough to reach out and know these people and to go to these shows and put herself in a situation where a lot of the time they do use their sexuality to manipulate a situation, to get what they want, to feel desired, to possibly feel in the relationship. And I can see you shaking your head right now. And I know that this is like not the popular opinion, but to me, there is no way to know specifically the extent of how bad a person he is based on what we know, just on what we know.
Well, let me butt in, because I have thoughts. Before I say anything on this, I will say that, and this is something I explained to Bobby earlier, experiencing this whole thing go down for me was almost like, because of the connection I feel to Jesse Lacey as an artist, it was like finding out that your brother or, a member of the family had done something bad and you knew they did something bad. And you know that even though it wasn't murder and it wasn't rape, it wasn't anything like that, it still was disappointing. And it's still hard, because we're talking about, this conversation's really hard, because it's almost like I love the man's work and what he's done for my life in such an intimate way, that you can't like defend actions, but you do, you would react to a circumstance differently if someone that you knew, a friend of a friend of a friend, did something bad. You'd be like, well, fuck that person, they did something bad. But if your actual blood and kin did something bad, you would be judgmental, but you would still be supportive and loving and understanding. And, not to diminish, what the women experience, and not to give a rain check to the things that Jesse Lacey did, because I think it's a lesson for everybody to understand that, like, hey, when you're in positions of power and stuff, you've got to be really mindful of what you're doing to other people, and how you're manipulating them, and how you're abusing that power, and how you're respecting people. And, Bobby, just to give you a little bit of a counterpoint to what you were saying, like, yeah, these obviously a girl who's going to a rock show and, saying that she's probably saying she's older than she is. It's a really common thing. And she's probably trying to act the part of an adult. And she's probably like, oh, I'll sleep with the band, if she even knows what that means. Right. She's still probably growing and understanding, and probably comes from a place of not a perfect family structure. And as an adult,
we're assuming so many things here.
We are assuming those, but just knowing the culture of these bands. I mean, Warped Tour was canceled after the Me Too argument, okay? After all this Me Too stuff, they literally canceled the biggest emo scene festival in the country.
But knowing the culture, you're talking about knowing the culture. Knowing the culture, going to these shows as a kid when I went, I would be hanging out with girls my age, and they would ditch me in a heartbeat to be with the band, to hang out with the band, and to put themselves in the position, throwing themselves literally in the laps of these guys. And
yeah, but the guys, they do need. There is a place where we hold them in responsibility for understanding.
100%.
Yeah,
100%. And I want to keep reiterating that, like, I think he knows that he abuses power, and I think he knows what he was doing was wrong, as you pointed out, Brian, when he says, like, you know, like, I can't have these on my computer. Obviously, you're seeing something there that the wheels are turning in his head where he knows what he's doing is wrong. I'm just saying that there's no... And you're talking about it being like your brother, your kin, or doing stuff. I'm completely separating myself from even liking his music when I'm talking about this. I think this is just a bigger gray area than we want to talk about. And there's so many things, there's so many elements that we don't know to what happened and the insight at which they happened to. And they go on
but
to
we
this
understand
day.
But I think we all are in consensus, and most people are. And Jesse Lacey, from his admission, is like, you know, he did some shit that he shouldn't have done. And like, that's like a fact.
Absolutely.
It's like,
but he also referenced talking about how he cheated on his wife, and years after the fact, and 10 years before the apology, he had gone to therapy. And
right.
Because he realized that he had a problem with sex and the relationship he had with sex, and did acknowledge a few things, and never spoke about that. And I'm not saying that he's not guilty of like doing those things, but to just go on the words we see off of a girl writing on the internet when her recollection is one thing and you never hear another person's opinion, I don't know.
Well, when he won't even acknowledge the specific incidents, I think it's pretty apparent that's an admission of guilt, in my opinion, if he feels that it's necessary to come out and openly apologize. And he doesn't, you know, like you were saying, Christian, he doesn't defend himself or his actions in the past, even though he doesn't explicitly address them. But
that's to me is also kind of a weird area, because you talk about he doesn't specifically mention that.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the same time, like, people don't think his apology is enough. And I think
that's a separate thing. I would like to delineate those two things, because I'm in the camp that, like, you know, we're having this conversation because of all that, and I think it's a healthy conversation. It's made me much more accountable for things I've done in intimate encounters where you're like, oh, they're not into this as I am, and vice versa. And I think that it's an important reflection on, you know, who we are as people, to be very, very mindful of that, and especially young people that are growing up and getting in positions of power. They need to understand that their actions have consequences. And the fact of the matter is that these things were known things, and like, this had already come out. And people had accused him of stuff, but in the culture in the music scene in 2005, it didn't matter. People did the same thing where they're like, they're just girls trying to get away with a band. So what? He's a dude. He's just, you know, and that was the mentality. And we're in a different state.
That's not my argument. My argument is just I can't say those specific accusations. Like, we know if those happen and those are true. He obviously abused his power in some way.
Right.
He apologized for it. But here's the thing. If you say him not, you know, speaking to those women directly is basically an admission of guilt, right? Like, him being like, him not addressing it was like...
Well, the fact that all of these accusations came out, and then he put a statement out about it, right? It's like, we have the Fifth Amendment for a reason. He's not going to incriminate himself.
But at the same time,
it's pretty explicit what he's talking about, though.
If he's putting out an apology, and he didn't do those specific things, and he's trying to be,
why wouldn't he say that?
Because that's when the media attacks you even more. That they'll say stuff like, that didn't sound like a sincere apology for some stuff that you have done. Because he could know full well of things that he did wrong and the way he treated women. Because I feel like he feels guilty for something, and it's very possible he could have done those things. And if I had to put my money on it, I would say I'd go that direction. But at the same time, if he knows that he's abused his power to just manipulate women, women of age, that's enough reason to be sorry, and that's enough reason to say sorry and to come out and apologize for the way you've acted, and know that as a society, as a person, you've got to get better.
So, but that's not illegal either,
but
right?
Exactly. But for him to come out and be like, and say those things, and then be like, but I didn't do those two things those girls are accusing me of. It's like, okay, well, it doesn't sound like you're really sorry for anything then, if he says it that way. That's my only argument to that point.
I don't think there's such thing as like a perfect apology in the climate, you know. it's, there's a band, I'm not going to call them out. There's a band that was peers of mine through the music scene in Orlando. And people familiar with the Orlando music scene may know this, but there was a lead singer of a band that was like up and coming. And he was the band found out he was texting an underage girl and requesting nudes. And they broke off the band and they ousted him online, and he was completely disowned. And that's how those things are handled now.
Damn.
Like, it's just unacceptable, right? And that's the power of things like this. And, Jesse Lacey's the sacrificial lamb, and it's like, at this point, we can look back and go, man, number one, that that shit was happening. Maybe not to that degree, maybe worse in some instances, maybe not as much in some others. But like that music scenes in general are fraught with sex and drugs, and that's the whole, the thing of them. They're very youthful and spontaneous, and that's kind of like the allure for young people, right? But because of these conversations, we're in a different place. I think the real conversation is for these people, like what is like a sincere apology? What is like the path to forgiveness? What does it mean for their legacy? I think those are the important questions. And the feeling right now, because it's still fresh, is like fuck this dude, and fuck this band. Everybody. And I never like when anybody's accusing a group of people like this band is more than just this dude. Like he's the front man, but like there are producers and mastering engineers and the other bandmates, the stage ops. Like it's a whole operation of people that put in really good work to make good shows and good production. And to the whole like, oh, the music sucks anyway. When all these allegations come out with these people that are part of much larger things, and they make it about something else when it should just be about the women, and it should be about how we're treating people, and they make it about other things, I think that's equally toxic and not healthy. So sorry, I'm tangentially going.
No, and I largely agree with what you're saying. I think the conversation has to happen about like how much did the band members know about this, though? It's like if he's bringing 17, 18-year-olds backstage,
but he wasn't. Most of the things that were legally not correct were him privately messaging girls, not him.
The second girl, when she was 18, said she was assaulted sexually by him. Felt cornered. Sure. He pinned her against the wall. So and like you said, okay, so a lot of it was happening outside of the scene. So that's also.
But what would you think
right?
if you're in the band? And I don't. Again, there could be. We just don't know that. But I think there is a point to be made of like, hey, he's the lead singer of our band, and women are constantly going into his dressing room. I don't think that's like in the early 2000s that's like, should we be concerned? Like, I just don't think that's culturally where the mindset was.
And it's very possible within a band, somebody could be committing worse crimes, but his name is not as popular. But he could be just as bad of a person. They're not. No one's ever gonna, 17 years later come out with a thing about, the bassist of Brand New or, the drummer, because
I think they would.
I think it would be. I'm sure they could.
I don't think, but it's not even a sensational enough story for it to gain traction.
I think it would be.
I don't know.
I know. I kind of agree that it probably wouldn't get the same. And I think, so like you were saying, Christian, this is a conversation that needs to happen. It is long overdue. Men have been abusing women and abusing their power for far too long, and it's gone largely unacknowledged. And there's systems built up around a lot of these people, as we see with the Harvey Weinstein, where everyone kind of knew what was happening. Bill Cosby, it was just widely known in the comedy community and in LA generally, from my understanding, before Hannibal Buress brought it to the public at large's attention. So it's the kind of thing where it seems a lot of people turn a blind eye. And yeah, I'm happy that we're not doing that anymore. But I also think that we have to understand when we're talking about a 15-year-old who, I can't remember if it was her or the girl who was 16 when they met. She was a photographer, and she said that Lacey was the first guy to ever express, sexual interest in her, call her beautiful and all this, right? And to foster these relationships with someone who does. When you were 15 or 16, did you guys know what a healthy relationship was?
Yeah, exactly.
I had no idea what a healthy relationship was. So some idol, you just assume that he's this amazing person because you worship his music, you love it. There's something there that I think is it heightens why the news media covers it, because it's a good face. But I think we do stand we do also need to have a conversation about how widespread these types of abuses and manipulations happen within families, happen within businesses. It maybe not something that sells ad copy and that looks good in a 30-second clip, but this is a problem that is deeply embedded within the society that we live in and the world at large. So I think to question the intention of the victims is maybe missing the point about how men abuse and manipulate women.
Oh, there definitely needs to
generally
be a conversation about that. And I think, and I talked about it on my podcast with the Louis situation is, and I don't see it as much in this situation, but definitely the Louis situation where the biggest perpetrators to me are the people that know about things and do nothing about it. Obviously, the most guilty person is the person themselves for doing such things. But when there is evidence and just overwhelming evidence of people coming forward saying, "Hey, this guy did X, Y, and Z. This guy, is kind of a creep. This guy is doing this," and people are like, just get over it. You'll be fine. Don't just brush it on the road. This is a big deal. It's good for your career. It's good for that. Mm-hmm. Those are the real POSs, in my opinion, that have the opportunity to do something about it. And I don't know. This will always be tough for me because if everything that those girls said that he did, then it really hurts to see that someone that you admired so much would do something like that. But at the same time, I won't pretend to put myself in his position and knowing what that power felt like. And I would like to think I'm above that. And I would like to think I was above that at that age. Mm-hmm. But when you have that much power and you feel like God and, everything's coming to you, it's impossible for me to forever hate a person. Just, I don't know.
I get what you're saying. And hatred, like you said, it's so easy. I feel like we need to, I wish we had a woman here, but I feel like it's right to make the movement that's happening right now the most productive. While we should absolutely hold individuals accountable, and people love seeing people that are powerful fall. That's something that, regardless of what they're falling for, people love this. But I think it would be very beneficial to expand the conversation of abuse into where the majority of it happens. And, most people who are abused by family members or people that they know, like family friends or close friends. And like you were saying, friend groups know when something's happened. People talk, but you don't want to break up the friend group. We're all hanging out together all the time, this and that, Right. So it's this is a conversation without the power element involved, which obviously heightens the ease of access maybe to a variety of people societally. But I think it would be beneficial to expand the conversation to show, for me personally, this whole movement, it has highlighted toxic elements of my personality and how I've acted in past relationships. And I've had to come to terms with, how I've treated women in the past. And yeah. I think this is something that I'm sure, same with you guys, and I would hope that most men that hear this stuff would feel that way. But the idea that women are coming out of the woodworks to hurt these powerful people
and become famous somehow, become recognizable, exposing make their monetary gain.
It's a point that's never stood any ground with me personally.
Well, I mean,
I'm sure it's a fraction, but a very small fraction.
Exactly.
That's why I love having this podcast. I'm glad we were able to have a really good, mature conversation about this, and we get into the nuance of things better when you can talk like this. And I feel like that this doesn't happen on the internet. I mean, it's the whole problem with a political discourse is that people just love things to be super easy. And shit like this is super complicated, and involves a lot of feelings, a lot of people, a lot of recounts, and I can't tell you the level of sadness and disappointment I had during this, and then just to see people, and then when it's getting kicked when you're down, I'm already pissed my hero and my idol as a singer-songwriter is a piece of shit. Has been a piece of shit in his past. That's hard.
But I've been a piece of shit in my past.
Yeah.
To what extent?
I never asked for naked pictures from a 50-year-old. Like I never did that. Like
Right.
And would I have if I was Jesse Lacey? I hope not, but maybe I don't know.
But it all goes back into like at no point in any of those do they ever say whether or not that he knew they were underage. Like you talked about him. You talked about him it being on his computer.
See, I don't want to get into any of
No.
But I don't want to get into any of the like.
I just don't know. I'm just saying I don't know personally. So like,
let's just say he probably could have done a little bit of research
and obviously
probing.
Obviously, he knows he did something wrong. You can see it in his lyrics that he struggles with something, and he struggles with something in an intense way. But I think, I don't know. To cast these people aside, and you posed the question, what's the right apology you should give for them to somehow earn that person's forgiveness? The strongest people I know that were real victims of stuff, take, for instance, the guy I do a podcast with, Adi, who, and we're talking this sexual like grooming and stuff like that. Yeah, it's wrong. But this dude was almost murdered over $10. And he forgave them. He forgave them and he moved on. Like, at no point are you going to be able to move on with your life if you're not able to forgive somebody, even apology or not. And I think that's a really strong attribute in somebody. So he doesn't need to apologize to me. He needs to apologize to those girls if that's what he did. And I think if there's strong women, I think they should forgive him.
I'm not going to say that they should forgive him. Obviously, ideally, we could forgive, but it's something that
for their own benefit, though.
No, and I understand, and I think this gets into a really tricky conversation about psychological implications of trauma and manipulation, and how that affects you for the entirety of the rest of your life, and a lot of times, requires counseling to have serious progress with.
Absolutely.
I don't think
if you just base level, if you did not come from a good psychological relationship with your father and mother, it's most likely that your relationships are going to reflect those poor experiences you had, and especially if you have a sexual experience with someone famous who discards you.
Absolutely,
that's overall net gonna scar you and be terrible.
And I'm not saying they should forgive him for for his own good. And I'm not saying it because I think they should just be above that or anything like that. I'm saying for the healing process in themselves, they need to be able to forgive. They have to be able to forgive. So if they want a relationship, if they want healthy relationships in the future, if they want to psychologically move on, there's got to be some door that is closed into which you move on. I think the strongest people do that just from evidence.
I don't think strength is necessarily the best word to use here, because these people are vulnerable, right? And it gets into if we want to talk about forgiveness, I think justice is a word that maybe victims would understand a little more, because as far as I know, he hasn't reached out to any victims individually and apologized. Like, I know Louis C.K. had talked about how he did reach out to a lot of women that had made accusations against him and apologized to them individually. So it's I agree with you. I think he should absolutely reach out to them individually, and maybe that can start a healing process. In terms of forgiveness, if the man's doing illegal stuff and doesn't serve any time, doesn't face any consequences for this, that's a long stretch to ask someone who is manipulated to completely forgive someone who really hasn't been negatively impacted by this outside of ending the band 6 months early. I can't say that I would.
Early. I'm not saying I would be that strong enough person, but outside of not even getting an apology from him, not even without the justice that he probably deserves if he did this, I'm just saying from their own well-being, whatever they. But I'm not in that position, so. What the hell do I know? I've never gone through that. I don't know that. Yeah. I just know women that have gone through that.
Sure.
And it didn't take an apology from that person. It didn't take jail time for that suspect for them to be like, I forgive that person, and that's better for me, just to forgive that person.
Right, and at the healthiest, I feel like a lot of people have to work on forgiving themselves first, right?
Yeah.
Because there's so much guilt that comes with this type of manipulation. Like, what did I do to
put myself in this situation?
Exactly, and
Right.
it's. I just think we always have to understand that we still have we have a growing understanding of how the brain works, but I think in terms of traumatic experience and how much this affects you physiologically, it's we really need to flesh this out on a deeper level before we ask someone to to forgive someone without any real repercussions for what they've done or any apology. We're kind of just rehashing stuff here.
Right. Do you think it's possible that something happened to Jesse when he was younger?
I was just thinking about this today, and I'm not sure. I think this is a tricky topic because a lot of people like to paint it as easy as abuse victims become abusers. Mm-hmm. I would say it's, in my opinion, not that simple. From my understanding of how things are, I'm sure that you live what you know. So there definitely is that. And I was thinking about a song like Sic Transit Gloria, right? It's a song about a man who is coerced
That's exactly
into
what we're talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Into a sexual situation that he's not comfortable with. And yeah, I can definitely see how if someone's abused at a young age, how this is what they know. This is they cope with things by recreating it, taking power back on some level. And Lacey is also an addict, and that's no excuse, obviously, but he was very open about struggling with addiction at this time as well. I'm not sure if it was just alcohol or what.
Yeah, and I mean, it's
If we're going to take him at his word for everything else, as far as like, obviously he abused people, and you can see that in the lyrics that he has, then we should probably take him at his word in Sic Transit Gloria. That's how I feel.
If it's not a character, yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, there's an argument to be made that he experienced grooming as a young man, and like an older woman, manipulated him into sex, and that affected him negatively. I know we don't have any hard concrete evidence that happened, but it certainly doesn't excuse what he did, and we need to talk about it. And if there's any good thing that's happened from all of this, it's that it's made everybody evaluate all this stuff on a really deep personal level and discuss what's wrong and what we're going to accept as a society. It's always a shame when it comes at the cost of your heroes being ousted and people spitefully saying, well, their music sucked anyway, and you're like, well, that's not what this conversation's about, so you're a piece of shit.
That's another thing, though, is like we idolize these people, and for no other reason than we like the tunes that they make.
I like his tones.
And
I like his tones, bro.
My message to
good
people
tones.
would be idolize. I've made that mistake in my life, idolizing people like that. But idolize the people in your life, your family and friends who are real, true role models.
But
in
they
your lives.
disappoint too. That's the
No,
sad part is you meet people
absolutely,
that like
100%, but
you
I'm
admire personally, and you dig up, like the more you get to know your parents. Goddamn, like, and I love my family so much, and I love my parents, and I think they're mostly good people, but like there's shit in their past, and like
there is in everybody's past. I'm talking about like if there's sometimes I've neglected to really bond, even when I was young, with someone that was like a real strong leader and a real strong person who talks about how they went through a past and how they had addiction problems and are the absolute most beautiful people now.
Right.
And we should cling more to people we know instead of these imaginary, they're not imaginary people, but they might as well be, because we're not going to hang out with them. We're not going to be best friends with them. They don't need to be our heroes. We can like their art. We can enjoy their art, but like cling to the people in your community, in your family that like are strong.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Burn your idols. I'm down with it.
That's the name of your guys' album that'll be coming out.
Yeah, burn all your idols.
Ooh.
In a very mystic time. Check their website that doesn't exist.
But yeah, this was a really great conversation. I might split this up into 2 eps. Hard to say at this point, because we went really long, and I want to keep it all because I thought it was all a really good conversation.
I just want to be really clear real quick. I was not condoning a 24-year-old doing anything with a 15-year-old. I just want that
good.
to be perfectly clear. Any inserts, I don't.
But what if she was asking?
Did you see what she was wearing?
Did you see what she... See, that's what the questions were not asking. What were these girls wearing, and how were they manipulating Jesse? Believe men. Is that it?
No, I don't think that's what we're trying to.
You don't think that's relevant
here.
at all?
Oh, I landed on the wrong note.
Okay, so I would like to ask you guys a final question.
All right, here we go. Let's break it down.
Brian, you seem to accept pretty much that these allegations are true.
Yeah.
How does this affect your relationship with the band and the music, listening to it going forward? Can you separate, a person's past with their art?
It's something that, I'm definitely thinking a lot more about lately. Like I said, pretty much when I found out about this, I stopped listening to Brand New. So that was late 2017, and it's 2019. I listened to a bit of them for this podcast. And, yeah, it's a tough one. I think I can definitely – there's things like I could bring up other examples, like something like Chinatown, right? So it's an undeniably classic movie by Roman Polanski, who raped a 13-year-old girl, right? And this movie actually deals with themes of the rape of underage women by I don't want to spoil anything for Chinatown. It's a movie from like the 70s, but it's so it's like it's an incredible piece of film that dives into this issue and shows how close to home it can be. Mm-hmm. So I think there can be merit to the art that gets produced. Like we said, you write and you perform what you know. So sometimes these people aren't even aware of how toxic what they're doing is and will openly discuss it. Someone like an R. Kelly, a lot of people have been digging into a lot of his lyrics and stuff lately. His relationship with Aaliyah starting when she was around 14, and this is something where R. Kelly, with the length of time he's been doing things and the consistency, that's someone where I don't think I can really appreciate what he does anymore. But I don't know. It's a very tough question. I feel like the art can stand alone, but you have to be aware of where your money is going. So we shouldn't prop up problematic people, abusive people, and allow them to perpetuate their actions just because they make classic works of any medium, right? We're way past that time, and I feel like a lot of the structures that have been built up in our society are built on this historic abuse, not only of women, but of minorities as well, obviously. And if that means that we have to stop watching or stop giving money to people who are knowingly doing things that are not acceptable anymore, I think we're trending towards where we need to be.
So since I already own the albums, I can just continue to listen to them. Right.
I'm not gonna put my moral compass on you. Like I said, I love science fiction still, and he clearly has grown a lot since the time when these allegations are from. So I would say that I'm not going to judge someone who can still enjoy this music, but I'm also not going to judge someone who looks at them skeptically and maybe thinks that they're giving someone a pass that shouldn't get a pass. I think that's a valid viewpoint as well. Yeah.
Very open-minded, Brian.
Well, I'm in public here, so I'd like to try and keep it. Not that I'm.
So you're
not that I'm
you're
not
lying.
Not that I'm not.
So you're lying.
Interesting. I've never said a true word on this podcast.
Allegations have occurred that Brian has been falsely reporting his beliefs on Pop-O-Holics podcast.
Fake news.
Fake news.
No, I'd like to think that I'm trying to be my ideal self in the public sphere. So, but I do believe everything that I've just said.
I think a lot of people are, and I think the problem I have with these, a lot of these movements is like, I've said all the great things from them. Like, it starts these conversations. These are important things we need to get better as a society and be better men, and be better fathers, be better husbands, be better sons. That's so important. The thing I don't like is the toxicity that occurs and like the witch hunts and the people making it about themselves. Like some people do comment on this and speak about it, and it's really about them, and that it makes them feel like a better person because they're like, I'd never do anything like this. And I know pieces of shit who fucking got on this brand new thing, and I'm like, I know you did some sketchy stuff. I know you're kind of a piece of shit down, but I've heard from women that you've encountered with, or and I don't want to make it personal on them or whatever, but you know, I think the important thing is with all of these, like, we should be coming out of a place of understanding and love and compassion for people that are abused, and compassion for those who are victims or claim victims, and understanding the responsibility that we all have as people. And that's the good things that come from it. But I would say that as far as the art goes, and bringing it back to the original question of, like, do you support the art? Yeah, you vote with your dollar. You know, if it comes down to it, and maybe I'll get crucified for this online, but it's like Jesse Lacey has done so much good for me. And I think a YouTube comment put it really good on his, like, the last song they ever released is called Simple Man on YouTube. And one of the commenters said, I don't know if Jesse Lacey's a good man who did something bad or a bad man that did something good. Maybe a little bit of both. And, you know, that's what I wrestle with listening to the music, and it's definitely tainted what's in effect. And it's like, will I ever listen to a Cosby album ever again? Well, Cosby never meant that much to me, and also he drugged and raped women over the course of like 30 fucking years, which is heinous, and he was a grown-ass man and still doing it, and like it's a totally more despicable like aspect. And so yeah, and for my money, it's not worth getting to. Now, is that about his comedy? No, the man was a great comedian, and I'm not going to shit on his comedy, but I'm not also going to, you know, hold him in high regard as a person. But it's ultimately your choice, and, you know, our choice together. And I would encourage anybody making these judgments about people and making judgments with their dollar, know that their dollars were strong, and always like ask yourself before posting online and making comments about things, is this coming from a place of compassion? Am I trying to make myself feel better? Because I think that's really important, to not make it about you. It's certainly not about you and your thoughts on this fucking band. Should we be doing this podcast? I'm regretting all this.
As we wrap this up here.
The devil and God are raging inside all of us.
God, this is so complicated. Guys, I don't know how I feel.
I can't wait till I'm invited back for a little bit lighter topic.
Yeah.
Our next episode
I invited
is
the
gonna be called
comedian.
Smash the Patriarchy with Bobby Kady.
I invited my brother over, who's a comedian, for the most downer, serious episode.
Yeah.
Personal,
I know,
tricky,
after
politically
listening to this,
mind-filled.
so many people are going to be like, I want to see this guy's comedy. Like, this is a very funny topic. Yeah, well, maybe we can do I want to come back for one of them Beer Bros ones.
Yes, Beers with Bros.
So we got to do Beers with Bros. We'll do something.
And we'll do it all in person next time.
That'll be good.
And I'm Chris Conkling.
All right. So, Bobby, can you separate the art from the artist? You didn't answer your own question.
Yes. Yeah, I can. Because it's like you said, it's what they mean to me. I don't listen to Cosby because I don't like Cosby. So it's very easy for me to like be like, I won't listen to him.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so, like I was saying earlier, so much of it is like, you know, is Jesse a person in his life that realizes what he did wrong? And, you know, has he grown as a person from then? And can, you know, it's my belief that everyone can be redeemed, and that, you know, everyone has, you know, when I say the devil and God are raging inside of me, and like his album said, I got that tattoo because that's how I feel. I feel like people have a decision every day to make, whether to make the right or wrong decision. And we struggle with it. I struggle with it. Yeah. And I'm not here to judge anybody. And I do feel, to people that are victims of sexual abuse, my heart goes out to them. I hate that that's a thing, and it's sad that we as humans can do that to one another, but at the same time, I feel like there's also, you know, there's a part of me that believes everyone should get a second chance.
And I appreciate you bringing that up about redemption, because I think with the way a lot of this movement's been handled, and it's clearly exacerbated by the complete lack of nuance in online discussion, but the media plays a role in it as well. We need to have a conversation about, can someone be redeemed, period, right? It's like, I feel like so much of our society, down to, you know, in our prison system, is very much based on this idea of someone can be irrevocably, you know, damned, and society just pretty much dehumanizes them and says, you will either rot in jail or be killed by the state, right? And this is something that I don't want to get into that whole thing, because we could get into a whole
3 hours
3 hours
later
about the death penalty. But I think we need to have a conversation about the levels of this type of stuff, how it happens ubiquitously, but also how I think Dave Chappelle's recent stand-up sketches, he talks about how in this era, if we're going to have a true movement, and he's kind of speaking for women, but he's just saying, women, you're going to have problematic allies, if real change is going to happen. And I think there's a real level of truth to that, because
There is.
There's so much embedded that has been so normalized for so long that is completely toxic, that we need to really peel back the layers of this to where we can talk about something that's not just explicit drugging and raping, but also power dynamics and relationships and what is a healthy relationship. So I'm just totally
Are
rambling
relationships healthy in general?
now. Forever
I was gonna say,
alone.
why can't we have healthy relationships? Also, fuck men.
Yeah.
Or vice versa.
It's also a message that gets thrown out there. And I think you got to judge like somebody's heart. I think, honestly, if I had to guess, Jesse Lacey probably struggles with what he did in the past a whole lot.
Yeah.
Versus like you see Cosby, and I read an article the other day that he compared himself to MLK and Mandela for what he's going through right now.
Oh my
and considers
God.
himself a political prisoner. So yeah, put a bullet in that guy's head. I don't give a shit. Like,
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks guys for doing this.
thank you for having me, Popoholics.
No, thanks for coming, man.
I
I
had a
appreciate you making the trip
blast.
up. We played chess all day. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get you on for a more exciting episode. That's, I had it was so great because all my brand new conversations have been centered around all what we did discuss for the last half of this, and it was really good for us to be okay with enjoying the music and rehashing that, but also acknowledging, reality. So thank you guys. This is really awesome. This is ongoing month of love. It's maybe the last episode, month of love. This is going to be probably a two-parter. I see us splitting the episode. We might take the next week off, boys. We'll see.
Are you gonna put some brand new on the
Yeah, brand
end
new's
of
gonna
this
be,
as you're gonna play
coming
it?
in.
So you're gonna have to listen to it anyway.
And if you like brand new, or if you liked brand new, check out my music. I've never asked a 15-year-old for naked text. Actually, no, I have, but I was 15 too, and she was my girlfriend.
Cell phones weren't around when I was 15.
So I think it was okay. I shouldn't put that. I should cancel that. That shouldn't be on public air.
I don't know about you, but I never get tired of it. Number 99.
When I grow
Just
up,
as I am.
when I grow up, I wanna be a heretic. I feel like that line wrote that line after everything, and somehow he traveled in time and put it there.
I think he just wanted to say a heretic in a line. He's like, one time I read the Bible and I read the word heretic.
Anyway,
So
thanks. Oh, go ahead.
before we there's a line in You Won't Know. He says, "Your daughters weren't careful. I fear that I am a slippery slope. Now even if I lay my head down at night, after a day I got perfectly right, she won't know." So I feel like at this point, I don't know when he started getting, and the first line's, "Hey, Mr. Hangman, go get your rope." So he's like almost crucifying himself for his past self, and it's like, even on my days where I know that I haven't done anything wrong, this still, he's aware of it, it haunts him, and he did hopefully change. I don't want to leave it on like, he's a great guy completely, I totally support him, but I think there's something in this music that is worth listening to, even if he's a problematic person.
Yeah, I mean, you can follow his wife on Instagram, A King Lacey. I do, and she's like a fashion designer, and she's really cool. And she posts stuff with her kids, and sometimes with Jesse. And he's trying to live his life now. I don't think it's something you wake up and you're like, I'm a changed man. And I think that's what a lot of his music's about. It's something you have to work for every day, and you're going to live with all your past sins and what you've gotten wrong, and you'll have to be okay with that and forgive yourself, and hopefully people can forgive you. And for those listening and you fucked up in the past, like, it's okay. Tomorrow's a new day, and you're going to live with it, and it's going to suck, but tomorrow's a new day.
And now I'm
new
just
day.
questioning myself, because he says your daughters weren't careful, and it sounds like victim blaming. I'm going to get shit on, but sorry, guys. Consume consciously.
Yeah, that's...
Bon appetit.
Don't go molesting.
Don't go molesting.
Yeah, except, like, don't go changing. It's don't go molesting.
The old classic.
Never to see any other way Pop-O-Holics.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for being here, man.
All right. Good night.
Bye.
I wish I was a simple man, always quiet, always had to make plans on my own. Try to be honest, to understand. I'm often jealous, it's not as simple as that. Back in my own home, quietly going crazy, bored, tired, and lazy, and blue.
Pop!